Welcome to the Cyber Call, the podcast by Ride of Boom for managed service providers looking to stay ahead in an ever-changing world of cybersecurity. Each week, we dive into the latest threats, trends, and real-world strategies to help MSPs protect their clients and grow their businesses. Let's build a safer, stronger community together.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday to you all. We spent a week away with Memorial Day, and hope you all had a fantastic holiday. It's good to see you all back. Hello from Vancouver as well. Good to see you all out there. So let me, as people come on in, we'll hit a little bit of, it is Eric Monroe. Well said. We're halfway through the year, Chip. I mean, granted, it's the beginning of June, but wow, this year is absolutely soaring. Let's start off with a touch of banter. Let's talk about this. And Chip, I'll throw this to you first. So NVIDIA comes out today with the petaflop super chip. And I watched a little bit of the video on it, man. Although I don't know all the terms, there's a lot of horsepower behind this chip. And it appears, from what I gathered, that they're really looking to bring, the power back to the user, and from a secure standpoint, letting you process locally versus moving workloads off into the internet. And I'm curious, one, your thoughts on the overall, announcement, and what does this do to the overall, the open AIs and Anthropic models of the world? Does it hurt their market share potentially if you start giving the power to the user and saying, hey, you don't need to go out and into these other systems?
Well, first off, I think it's a great move, and I would expect there'll be a lot more of this in the coming years. So locally running AI models have been a thing for a long time, really, and lots of people take advantage of them. In the US, I think there's far less willingness to do that because many of the open weight models are Chinese, and we have a natural suspicion. US and China are really the main horses in the race when it comes to AI, and we rightfully so, because there's so many bad actors in China, and I assume they consider us the same way. We don't generally run their models, but there are Western models that you can run locally on your machines today. So I think that OpenAI and Anthropic and the other frontier models, X, and X is sort of trying to rebuild theirs, but or Grok, they're always going to be relevant because they're always going to be pushing the edge where doing more than you could do with local compute. But I think locally running AI models are going to become ubiquitous everywhere. They're going to be table stakes. Microsoft's going to have them in their OSs, and obviously Apple will, and phone devices will. They will be everywhere within a year.
Mm-hmm. We didn't plan this, Arnesh, and we will introduce you fully in a little bit when we get into but we didn't plan this. You obviously, might have a touch of bias, but let that bias be, you can let it roll. We're amongst friends here. Yeah. Big announcement, right? I mean, giving that with Microsoft first to market with this NVIDIA chip, no?
I think the way to understand is tokens are the future. Token generation in every way possible is how the industry is gonna be thinking about it, and running local models and generating tokens cheaply will be a useful use case, and especially in the dev loop when people are kind of building something new, and they get throttled by their subscription and not being able to kind of move as fast as they would want. So in that case, I would imagine, a local model without the concern of throttling or paying for tokens will be an interesting use case. And I think coding is actually one of the killer apps for AI right now, and I think this kind of advances that in my mind.
That's interesting you say that. I was on with a CEO earlier today of a fairly decent sized software company, and he asked me, they play more in the upper mid market to enterprise, and he asked me, what we're seeing, in the MSP space, where do and I gave him my perspective, and then I said, what about you? And he's like, it's coding. He's like, and Chip, I think you could echo this as well. He's like, we are so much more efficient, Arnesh. He said the problem is the QA piece. Like that's the piece that we still have to be good at and relevant. But he's like, from a coding perspective, the efficiency is incredible.
Yeah, I think this actually helps with really reducing the cost to produce code. And as you said, like, because the cost will go down, the velocity will increase. The actual thing is like making sure that the right code is written with the right testing and compliance checks and all that before it gets released. But the actual initial cost is dramatically coming down. And this seems to be kind of a move in that direction.
Yeah. Good stuff.
And there is support, Andrew, for there are good AI-driven QA tools and security tools out there now already, and more being developed all the time. We ran into that, directly, Andrew, with SaaS alerts that we got to a point where our team had become so proficient, literally 5x'd our production output, and we had to hire more QA people. But we found AI-based QA at this point that is allowing us to catch up, and there's more coming all the time. Somebody in the chat talked about the NPM modules being compromised. That has been going on really since March, the supply chain attack stuff. And now there are AI-driven tools to help with that. So, the cycle of the tug of war, the back and forth between, the aggressive black hat community and the defending, the defending teams, the red teams and the blue teams, it just has increased in pace. I don't think anything's really changed in terms of who has the most leverage.
Yeah. Phyllis, how about you on this? Any thoughts? I have a question for you, but I'd like your thoughts first.
Well, what's interesting is I just read a report about the repatriation of the cloud and how enterprises are going back to hybrid. They're bringing compute back on-prem, and AI is one of the biggest drivers for both cost and for security.
So I'm going to hold off on my question, but I hope I can get back to it, Phyllis. But because of what you just said, Chip and I have joked around and reminisced that, again, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. We're building out data centers like there's no tomorrow. And are we going to find ourselves potentially with what you just said? Could we find ourselves potentially in the the build out of fiber, right, of the late 90s, early 2000s for the internet that's still unlit? Does that potential exist that we overbuild, and then from a security aspect we go, well, hey, this is ridiculous using, putting all this stuff out on the internet? What are your thoughts there, Phyllis?
I mean, I think that'll be interesting. It is a TBD. I mean, all the major service providers are investing hundreds of millions, if not over $1 billion, in, just like you said, these data centers to support AI. And then as these models are becoming more sophisticated, what you'll see, I can't recall the term, but it's like you need the response within a certain time so your code can run, so your agent can make those decisions. And you just can't get there sometimes with the cloud computing. And so you have to bring things on-prem. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I have spoken with a lot of CSPs and they are making these major investments.
Yeah, absolutely.
The way I would think about it is like the world today is hungry for tokens.
Right.
There is not enough token available. If you look at, earning reports from, Mag 6 or Mag 7, whatever, everybody says, like, if we add more tokens, we'll make more money. So that there is a real shortage of tokens. I think these data center capacity overbuild out, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to pan out, but the one clear use case is like frontier model training will require massive compute, and that is not coming from your local AI. So the training of frontier model, the advancement of the models will continue to require ginormous compute that doesn't exist today.
Yeah, and inference can be local. Training.
Inference can be local, but the training is something that requires this.
I guess the question is really, it'll all just come down to cost, though. How many people can afford all the tokens, and now you've got all this token optimization and all these things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, I've already seen a couple talks on how to maximize your tokens, and things like that.
So yeah, go ahead.
I would imagine that there are lots of MSPs that talk about back to the future and going back to local. I don't think that's where we wind up, and I'll tell you why. Local is hard to protect and secure. The compliance environment is getting more and more rigid. Phyllis, you definitely know that. I think where people wind up, if there is excess capacity as a result of the data center build out, I think people wind up with private enclaves and private clouds that they can demonstrate, through an audit are absolutely theirs. Their data is safe. They're running their own. They're running their own inference layer on their own infrastructure. So it is effectively local, but it's still managed and professionally managed with physical security and everything else in the hyperscalers and in the cloud service providers. That's where I would, there's no way I would recommend any business to go back to buying and managing servers in their office. That's just dangerous. It's irresponsible.
Not only that, Chip, but the biggest constraint I think everybody's going to find, and I think you and I have bantered about this, Chip, is the energy requirements that that RNS just put out, the need for massive compute. I think the flip side that maybe a lot of people aren't quite thinking about yet is as they fellows bring in these hybrid models, and all of a sudden they start seeing their electric bills,
right,
and need a small form factor nuclear reactor in their backyard to power this thing.
It'll be interesting. I read the report. I think it's largely, it's enterprise for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I mean, they had their survey data and they reported out on it. So
go Chip.
Andrew, there's one other. I know we're really going long in the banter here, but there's a side note to all this that's really interesting. And it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that NVIDIA announced they're partnering with Pulte Homes and they're putting mini data centers on your house and paying the consumer for the privilege.
Interesting.
So come on, free power, free internet, and you're playing host to basically one of what could be millions and millions of distributed nodes of wired together compute for training and inference.
Is the similar concept that you have like a solar roof, and
I was just thinking about the solar panels. So I'm not eligible. We have too many trees.
And kind of feeding back to the grid. So I think this is Exciting times ahead, man, for
Yeah,
sure.
it's a cool time to be alive. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, who would have guessed when all that extra fiber was in the ground and people were still hoping that consumption would catch up, and along comes Starlink and changes the entire game in how especially consumers, but a lot of businesses actually consume bandwidth, fast, low latency bandwidth. There's something else coming that we haven't even imagined yet. That's
So you bring up, I know the banter's going. Last thing, Aranesh, and then we'll get to you. But Chip, your last comment on Starlink. Okay, is SpaceX going to be a comms company? Is it that's going to be a really interesting play, isn't it? Where they're bundling in Starlink into this, and at the same time launching this IPO of something that's not yet fully proven.
Which part is not fully proven?
Well, I think the
orbital data center.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Building things on Mars and all the other things.
Oh yeah, that's definitely not proven. But the underlying core thesis of SpaceX is certainly proven. I mean, SpaceX puts more tonnage in orbit than every other country and company in the world combined every year for the past decade. Like that's a pretty well defined thesis. So, but I agree with you. Are AI data centers going to work? I have no idea. Can we ever have a colonization of Mars? I don't know. I'm not going to live to see that, and I wouldn't go even if I were given the opportunity.
That's a one-way trip right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know about that.
And Senor Los Gatos, I did see your point on that's really interesting in chat about Patterson Cake's assessment. He's saying, Chip, there's a poll showing that 90% of MSPs still administer on-prem. I'd love to know the specifics on that. Like, are we still, how much? Because most of the MSPs I'm talking to, Chip, it's, Entra, there's not Active Directory and things of that nature. So it'd be interesting to see that, like the nuance of that poll, if we can get it. And maybe I'll reach out to Patterson as well.
Well, that could include not necessarily server infrastructure. Like there's on-prem stuff that they're still doing, workstations and corporate-owned laptops and network devices, switches and routers and firewalls. There's always going to be on-prem needs, right? But I just don't like the whole server infrastructure play there. I don't think it's a safe move.
Yeah. You built a company and exited that company, so I know you know it. All right, let's get on into it. So I'll set the stage here that we spent a decade plus, building security around the network, then about 5 years around the endpoint, the whole time sitting right in front of us every day, the browser, unmanaged, unexamined, trusting it by default. The 2026 Verizon DBIR, shameless plug. Phil Langlois will be here in 2 weeks, Phyllis, so that'll be exciting.
Yes.
So don't miss that one. Said Infostealers sessions, token theft, OAuth attacks, almost every major attack pattern runs through the browser at some point. So today I wanted to bring on somebody that knows this subject and knows it at scale. Aranesh Chandra, who is the head of product for Microsoft Edge for Business. Appreciate you coming out here, Aranesh. This is the first time on the Cyber Call, hopefully many more.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andrew. I'm super excited about this conversation with you guys about browsers. It's an important surface from a security point of view, and I'm sure we'll get into all the details in the conversation today.
Yeah, can you give us a little touch about your background, Aranesh, and how you made it all the way to heading up a pretty big piece of the Microsoft stack? So
I lead the Edge for Business product team, and we build the Microsoft commercial browser. It's actually the same browser that comes pre-installed on Windows. But it turns into Edge for Business when you log into the browser with your Entra ID. And what it does, it really unlocks the the commercial value that we have built in the browser natively. And these are commercial value that is natively tied to the Microsoft security, compliance, identity management. All that infrastructure just shows up in the browser with no additional cost, no additional installs that require. So that's the bread and butter for what my team does. My team actually focuses on ensuring the right security, compliance, identity, and manageability shows up in the browser, which is actually the modern where the modern work happens. I've been at Microsoft for too long, 20 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. I came in through an acquisition. I used to be a developer a long time ago. And after the acquisition, I was a developer in Windows fundamentals team. So yeah, I've kind of moved around quite a bit. I worked on Chakra, the JavaScript engine, another kind of developer-focused thing. So this has been my journey to be working on Edge with a great team.
Well, thanks again for sharing that, and thanks for joining us. Let's get on into it. I'm playing the role of Kelvin today. I'm gonna have to find out where he is. I know he's been traveling. He's been really busy. So let's get on into it. So, as I mentioned, we spent a decade building security around the network, Arnesh, and then we a bunch of time on endpoint, and even John Strand talks about on the margin the endpoint with modern EDR and Defender certainly, and CrowdStrike and the others. Not the place attackers are going after out of the gate. So, from your perspective, why has the browser been the thing we've been skipping for so long?
That's an interesting question for sure. Well, if you think of the evolution of the browser, right? Only recently, browsers have become super central to your work in a manner that the users are spending a ton of time inside the browser. So for several years in the beginning, the browsers looked like just another app. It was a window, you did something in the browser, and you didn't pay too much attention. Only now the browser has become an infrastructure on its own. It is an endpoint, and this is caused by a couple of decades of cloud migration that has been going strong. The SaaS adoption in enterprise and commercial segment has been increasing. So what has happened is all your workload has moved to the cloud, and all you need is a browser. And that has made the browser uniquely positioned to become this key infrastructure element. So to answer your question, we did not intentionally skip it, right? It evolved, in a manner that our security model didn't catch up. The growth of SaaS adoption is what is causing this new paradigm shift, and browser to be seen as an endpoint in its own right, and this and there's still kind of a lack of awareness of this. People still think their host device like Windows or Mac, if you protect that, browser is just another app. And I think one of the reasons that, when we were talking to you, Andrew, at Write a Boom, one of the reasons we were there is to kind of really evangelize this point of view that browsers have to be seen in a different way. And at this point, we are intentionally bringing the security posture and manageability that improves the security stance of a business.
Got it. So, identity, as we know, used to live in AD, Active Directory, on-prem. We were just talking about this in our banter behind the firewall. Walk us through, kind of how it migrated to the browser without anyone really, I guess, deciding, that that's where it should go.
Yeah. So identity didn't really move in the browser because it was an intentional design choice somebody made. What happened was it moved because the SaaS moved into the browser, right? As authentication, initially, as you said, like Active Directory to SAML to OAuth to OIDC, the browser became the place where the tokens live, right? The sessions persisted, the access decisions are being made. So nobody really declared that the browser is this new identity layer. It just became one by default because SaaS was brought into the browser, and then it just became where the identity decisions are being made. So I don't think it was an intentional migration, but it just happened.
Yeah. Eric, son, really good point. We're going to talk about that. I think there's a question on extensions as well, and certainly a really important piece. Chip, we talk weekly about for the past 5 years about Infostealers and passwords being stored, and even to a degree, like Chip, we've seen extensions that were quote unquote legit at first, but then updated with malware
because it gets sold to some new owners, right? I mean, it's a good known path.
Yeah, that's pretty frightening from a supply chain perspective. So most users don't understand how much identity context their browser holds at any given moment, RNS, like cookies, tokens, creds, saved credentials, active sessions, which you just mentioned. I guess, what do you think if you could kind of visualize this in layman's terms for people, what do you think they would actually think if they understood what they're actually putting there?
Yeah. This is a really good question to drive home the importance from a security point of view, like how important is the browser. I think most users would be shocked to see how much auth state is stored in the browser. As you said, long-lived tokens. Yeah, that's another thing which is an interesting security decision people make. Cookies and all the other things. Effectively, if users are able to visualize this state that browser holds, is like an identity wallet of some sort, and I think they would, if they are able to visualize this, I would think they would treat this surface, the browser, as a privileged security surface, not a casual app. And I think that is the main point. The browser is really an important surface on your device that needs to be protected and intentionally managed. And there are stats around this, right? Like internally, what we see is browser is the number one app on desktop PCs. There are some research even available on the internet that there are certain verticals where 90% of the time, over 90% of the time, is being spent inside the browser on a PC. So you open up your laptop and you just fire up your browser, and that's where you live. So just even if you examine your own use case on devices, you'll see like even the browser has kind of disappeared from the background. That is where this time is getting spent, even though people don't realize sometimes.
That's really interesting. It's like almost like I'll date myself, Phyllis, but like terminal. If you all your work was in terminal emulation, right? It's like that's where you live, right, and do all your stuff day in and day out. And So, final question for you, Arnesh. The browser is the one piece of the stack that users control more than IT. Now, granted, there are some management tools out there. Obviously, you guys, do a good job of it as well. But how do you build a security posture around something that maybe the end user treats so personally, right? Like, hey, this is my stuff, my cookies, my favorites, my extensions.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. So the way to think about this end user relationship with their browser, I think let me answer this in kind of two ways. First of all, I think putting security controls on a surface that feels like really personal, and if you make it more restrictive, then there is some cause of DSAT. I think there is a way to think about what security controls you build, what kind of browser you're using, and making sure that the enforcement of security is just in time, it is contextual, it tells the user why it is doing this. Sometimes, not a lot of care is being put in when you're kind of slapping together and bolting on security, and like you have one vendor who's doing your DLP, you have some other vendor doing something identity related, and when you open up your browser, there's a pop-up showing from your Windows tray about something else, and then there's another pop-up that shows, and those are not a very enticing experience, and especially when people security in generally, what it does, it's kind of a restricting experience. Like you are trying to do something, and the security admins have decided you cannot do this, and that is the such an important moment in an end user experience. Is you have to treat that very carefully. And what our team does is that we recognize this problem really well, and we try to kind of approach this in a very kind of compassionate manner to not over index on heavy-handed security. It has to be very contextual, very kind of educational. And most end users are very smart. They will understand, like, oh, this is a sensitive thing. I should not be printing. And there is this example I kind of cite quite often, is that there's I would not name names here, but some DLP control, if they work on a certain browser, if let's say there was a printing feature that was blocked, and if you go to a tab where you have a PDF and that's sensitive, and that printing, and you try to print it, it blocked the browser. What that external enforcement does is that the entire browser then gets blocked. You cannot do anything. You have 15 other tabs, but just one tab is sensitive, and your browser becomes unusable. Those kind of heavy-handed things, even though it doesn't matter in a grand scheme of things, but chips away from the feeling of autonomy and feeling of kind of trying to do something in the browser on their own. So the user has comes away with a DSAT, and my team, when we work in similar kind of situation, we make sure that the enforcement really is intentional and contextual, and it's not kind of arbitrarily heavy-handed, and ensuring that the end user experience remains positive. Is one of the things that we take pride in the work that we do. So, yeah, just one last point. The other thing is that what's happening is there was a couple of years ago, that allowing user choice for having their own browser and all that was an important thing for people because, as you said, it feels very personal. But now what we are seeing is that because of high velocity AI powered attacks that Chip, you were talking about earlier in the banter, that there is a need for people to really understand, like, do you really want to have to support multiple browsers on your fleet just so that you are able to cater to this personal interest for end users at the cost of having to keep up with updating it in different cadence, and the cost then is super high to keep up with the security. So what we are seeing is that there is a need of browser standardization that is coming up again. Like, people are really wanting to reduce their attack surface area because if you have multiple browsers that you have to update on a frequent basis, you are kind of increasing your cost, and your margin diminishes there. Sorry, it took way too long.
No, it was really good. It's a good segue, Phyllis. We talk about look, patching is a nightmare. The DBIR, like, we went the other way this year. Like, not patch times didn't compress. Go figure. We thought they would, knowing how much
Right.
they're going the other way. So it makes sense, and we're seeing this in the MSP space, right, Phyllis? We're seeing the need for further standardization, getting away from, look, if we can consolidate tools.
Exactly.
It's a genre that we're certainly seeing. So
I just have a real quick funny story when you talk about heavy hand and the browser. It reminded me, like, this is like over 20 years ago when I was at the agency. JavaScript was on every single website, but there are all these vulnerabilities in JavaScript. And the DoD said, no more JavaScript. No more JavaScript. Any website that has a Java, we're turning JavaScript off in all the browsers.
And HTML is next if you guys don't listen.
So then it was like, you go to the SIPRnet, the secret network. That was like a total DOS. Like, no website worked. I mean, talk about a heavy hand. It was like, I'm turning off JavaScript.
That is how people generally react. There's a heavy hand about security. And I think there is a need for really careful, nuanced approach to ensuring, because if you're not careful about security, and if you're creating DSAT, people are not going to engage with your policies the way you want the people to be on your side. And they're smart people, right? They want to be on your side. If you do it right, I think it improves the security outcome.
But I think it's a very funny extreme example, but it goes to speak to, like, what is patch management? How can patch management work so that you're not, like, every time there's a vulnerability, the essay's like, it's too many, and then the DoD comes down with this edict, right?
Yeah.
We can't keep up with all the patch cycles. JavaScript is super vulnerable. We're just turning it off. Not understand. It's a policy person making that, not understanding, like, the impact of that. But it's funny.
Yeah, interesting.
Well,
go Chip.
So we'll keep going. So Arnesh, is speaking of breaking things, something that comes up on this call and on another weekly podcast that Andrew and I drew with the group is the kind of nonstop breaking. Every week it's a different firewall VPN that's getting hacked, that's getting cracked. There's a lot more interest in ZTNA.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think the browser, I mean, we've defined now that the browser sort of is the identity interface. So in a zero trust network architecture approach, is the browser the starting point, the middle point, the end point? Does it encircle the whole thing? How do you see it?
Well, as we established, it is where the identity decisions are being made. It is an endpoint in its own right. The session state and the general browsing state of each session, the credential, if they are invisible to your ZTNA architecture, then the whole thing falls. So this is where actually this becomes the enforcement plane for your ZTNA, and the session gets initiated in the browser. The access decision is made. Is actually enforced in the browser, even if you have identity, backend supporting all this. But this plane is where the enforcement is happening. So it is a crucial part of the ZTNA architecture for any company.
So we were talking earlier about the people side of this, and it sounds to me like you're on a mission, or Microsoft is on a mission, to make the security side of this palatable, even friendly. Mm-hmm. Andrew knows that I'm a big critic of my personal philosophy for 30 years in this business is, myself and the companies that I've built, we exist to protect people from themselves, which is pretty cynical. And it doesn't seem like you're taking that approach. Like, you guys are really thinking about this from the standard of, how do we make people want to be secure? Is that how you see the role for Edge for Business?
I think there is, if you bring up, humans will be the weakest link in your security architecture.
Yeah.
And the way to think about it is to at least have the tools be designed and configured in a way that the easiest path is the secure path. There's smart defaults that you can offer. And obviously there will be need for education and training and making sure people don't do dumb things, because and I think this kind of race of making sure people the technology becomes smart enough that it prevents people from shooting down their foot. But unless that is achieved, end user training is an important aspect of it. Making sure that you understand the right kind of isolation and defaults and baselines to kind of take care of the obvious bare minimum things.
So the last question I think for me is OAuth and the OAuth workflow with session tokens. You've mentioned them a couple of times. We've seen this be a persistent problem among users, that they get phished, their session token is stolen. What is there something more that can be done to fix OAuth on the browser side?
Well, I don't think OAuth as a tech is broken. I think the governance and the ecosystem around it. I mean, the way to really take control of the identity and auth is kind of really take a look at over permission scopes, long-lived refresh tokens, right? Those are the kind of users blindly just allowing, clicking allow on things. I think those are the ways to kind of address the challenge with OAuth. And people sometimes just be either over trusting or just lazy in terms of how it does require controls to be provisioned in a more nuanced way. If I have to kind of shut something down, long-lived tokens should be banned in order to just improve something.
Arnesh, just a quick thing. It's someone in chat said, aren't certain browsers leaky with respect to privacy? Every time I log into a service, that asks if I want to stay signed in, ... So I'm not sure about the last part, but any thoughts to the privacy piece?
I think it is a good point. Not all browsers are the same browser, right? There are browsers, features are connected to services that power them. And it is really important for people to understand that the features and the services that you are using inside the browser, which gets powered through a service, is that service compliant based on your policies or not? And one of the things is really important to understand that most of these AI kind of features that are showing up in the browser, pay really close attention to like what is the commitment that the vendor is giving you in terms of how your data is being used to power that AI and kind of bring you some value back. And you have to really ensure that you are okay with that trade, because sometimes, not all, but some AI features really suck up the data, and you not knowing like what it is doing, but you are happy with the outcome, could have like a long-term detrimental effect. And Edge for Business, thankfully, what I would plug here is Microsoft in general is an enterprise company where there is a huge investment around data compliance and kind of privacy, and the service, the AI service that we build is like tenant bound. So it is not what Microsoft can see. Only the tenant is able to have the data accessible, and we there are the two states of data handling by a vendor is a controller and a processor. Controller is when the vendor controls the data, and processor is just that we process the data without using the said data that gets collected. So our AI is a processor AI, which is has only the tenant gets to see what's going on.
Very good. Phyllis, over to you. Chase, hopefully we'll get to your in a moment, but let Phyllis out. Yeah.
Sure. Someone kind of asked this earlier, that basically, there's so many extensions in your browser. It's pretty much an app store with minimal vetting. It's a high trust environment. We're just talking about all the authorization that's going on, the OAuth and everything. So what's the honest conversation that MSPs should be having with clients about their browser? As you said, it's just so essential.
Yeah, regarding the extension, I think you're absolutely right. It's kind of an app store inside the browser, and the extensions can run in super high privilege. They are, certainly a leak vector in if you're not aware of it. As Andrew mentioned earlier, that sometimes these extensions get sold to somebody else, and the functionality or the data collection, the rules will change so transparently that you will not even be aware of. So there is an important conversation about extension. There is, again, it is very easy to come in with super heavy-handed approach to it and say block all extensions and then everything is going to be safe, but that is not that's not the right nuanced approach. I think there is a value people derive from having extensions in the browser. It improves their productivity. It improves their kind of satisfaction with the workflow. So it is important for admins and MSPs to really understand this this nuance. So the idea of what the MSP should be talking to their customers about is to be offer the service about you being on top of extensions. It is a thing that let me discover the extensions for you. Let me be on top of it. That if it is getting sold to somebody else and it changed his behavior, I'm going to make sure that your fleet is still protected. The extension management in its own right is a pretty intense recurring thing. I don't think it's like a one and done that you can say, oh, okay, I'm only going to allow these 5 extensions and the world is going to be happy. I think there is a loss of productivity that if somebody wants an extension that is outside of that 5 thing that you had, it allows, it creates delay and things of that nature. So there is interest. I think there is the right way to approach this is letting the customer know that extensions are really important to be paying attention to. And there's a need for a process to be created around making sure that the right extensions are being at all times. And it's not like a one and done thing. It has to be kind of repeatedly, evaluated on a monthly basis, and kind of then use tools that kind of offer you that. And Edge for Business does that too, by the way.
Well, Phil, hey, Phyllis, just a quick question. Does this get talked about in, Control 2? A two-part question, extensions, should they be inventoried? And part 2 is, how are agents being looked at, again, from an inventory perspective? So just, can we do 60 seconds with you on those 2 things and then get back to RNS?
Yeah, I mean, I think, given this conversation, controls need to be more specific about it, right? So controls don't talk about browser extensions in particular.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they talk about scripts and things like that, which maybe you could bin things in there. So I think it needs to be updated. As far as agents, AI agents, is that what you're talking about? And inventory. We did release 3 companion guides around AI, around MCP, agent, and LLM, mapped to controls, and also where it's not mapped to controls, where you need other controls to bring in to safely manage and put controls around those 3 things with AI.
Got it. So whenever version 9 comes,
Mm-hmm.
that is it fair to say that it's going to be a pretty big release?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Back to you.
Yeah, sure. So, the browser is the one control plane that works the same regardless: managed, unmanaged, corporate, contractor, on the network, off the network. And, do you believe that the industry really appreciates what it means for how security needs to be architected, and really considering the browser?
Yeah, the short answer is I don't think it is well understood, but this is a great question. I mean, the line I typically use here is that the browser is the only control plane that follows the user, not the device. So it is any device of any nature, mobile, tablet, desktop, laptop. The browser is where you can enforce your policies that can roam across the different devices. And what the thing really I feel sometimes is missed in this conversation is browser has become this endpoint, this portable endpoint that can roam around. And if you kind of deploy it in the right manner, it creates opportunity to save cost while ensuring the right productivity and security stance is provided. So, there are scenarios like, having contractors working on in some cases, and people tend to offer them a managed device or a VDI or something. Instead, you can just give them a browser and make sure that the browser is managed, and in the process you are able to kind of save cost. So browser, the portability of it is so amazing. The app compat is kind of the ultimate app compat tool, right? It can work across different Windows, Mac, you name it, like Android, iOS, and if you have delivered the right kind of policies, you are able to affect so much device state here.
This is a little bit off script. How do you recommend? So we have a bunch of MSPs now who are like, oh my gosh, I've got to, go over my client, like a browser policy. Has anyone ever thought, like, what does that even mean? If you could just kind of, just give a couple suggestions. Like, what does a browser policy mean? We're used to asset inventory, vulnerability management. Like, what does that mean?
So what it means is really kind of understanding or creating a level of kind of shared understanding with the customer is like browser and the importance of the browser surface on their device, and offering them ways to ensure that we discover first, inventory, as you said, like, extension, what extensions are being used, what policies are there. If somebody is using sensitive content inside the browser, how do you ensure that this is not getting leaked into some places that there should not be? Is there the right DLP controls there or not? Are you using the right AI? Is the AI compliant? How do you ensure that all this shadow AI activity is blocked inside the browser, and only the authorized AI is supposed to be used? So that is the kind of conversation. It starts out with really getting on the same page with the customer about the browser being an important surface, and having to look at it from extension usage, from AI usage, from general kind of DLP angle of any kind of sensitive data used in the browser. So those are the ways to kind of engage with customers and offer them kind of extra protection.
So thank you. Real quickly around agentic AI, because it's on top of mind for everybody, and it's going to operate through browsers, work on behalf of users. So what does identity governance look like, when within your browser when it's not a human?
Yeah, this is a much deeper topic. I think at Build, Microsoft is going to be announcing a bunch of things around this. But the way to think about this is why a bunch of companies came out with an AI browser, because the purpose is that browser has so much context. Andrew asked about how much context the browser has. It has so much context. So for any AI to become useful to you, the only store of that context is the browser. So showing up in the browser makes actually a lot of sense. Only then, using that context, the AI can deliver a lot of value to you. So the way to think about agentic identities is that there will be two parts to it. One is like completely autonomous, completely agentic, that you can trigger from your own machine, and an agent that works on your behalf does the work completely autonomously. And then there will be an agent where you can think of human in the loop type of thing. It does a few things and then comes back, and you kind of interact with it. The important thing to understand is that agentic, complete autonomous activity will likely be a different identity associated with you. Like you, Phyllis, has an agent that takes action on your behalf, but it doesn't have all the privileges that you have. It has a narrow set of privileges. It has narrow set of access, and you have authorized that to take action on your behalf on these 5 things and nothing else. There are legislations being considered about any work that an agent does has to be audited or has to be recorded as such that it is Phyllis's agent that did the work, not Phyllis, because there is going to be, accountability and risk assessment of how people are, thinking about their state when agents start to do the work. And if you think of these agents, when you create, these are not just identity. They come with compute, they come with storage, they come with their own. This is like an additional employee that you just get to manage. And they will have their own bubble where the access and privileges are controlled separately. So people are thinking about agents just kind of running over wild. I don't think anybody wants to kind of enable that scenario. But human in the loop type of scenario where the agent can run on your with your context. I mean, again, you'll have to allow that to happen. And in the browser, there will be restrictions around, what kind of actions that you will want that agent to take action when it is running as you, not as a subordinate to you, but running as you. So there are, a lot of different conversations that are happening around this agentic use cases.
Awesome.
We could do a whole show on that topic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, that's going to be a big one, Chip. All right. Well, I know we could keep going here. First off, for those that joined us, thanks a million as always each week. Thanks for your great questions and chat. Aranesh, thank you so much for joining us. We'll definitely have you back. This was fascinating.
Absolutely. This was great.
Yeah. Chip, thanks for, I know you're on the road. Really appreciate you making the effort to join us as a co-host. Thank you so much.
No problem, Andrew. Aranesh, great to meet you. And Phyllis, it's always wonderful to catch up with you again.
Yeah, great to meet you guys too. Really, and thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Phyllis, thanks as always. We'll see you next week, guys. Take care.
Bye.
If you're in the Write a Boom community but not in our Discord yet, you're missing where the real conversation happens. Join community.writeaboom.com to access cybercall discussions, upcoming CTFs, boom camps, and early access to what's coming next. If you want to stay close to what's actually happening in the MSP security space, I'll see you there.